All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us tonight Brandon Hill. So, Brandon, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you like to do?
Okay, well, I'm from Louisiana, here in the States. I kind of just a big nerd. I love sci-fi. I love fantasy. I always have ever since I was very young. Some of my earliest memories. I draw ideas for what I write. I write books. Some of my earliest memories of drawing this stuff, and just kind of grew into writing books after all the different books I read. And the usual stuff like play video games. I have a good big collection of board games that I play with my friends, and I watch sci-fi and fantasy movies. That's
Awesome.
pretty much kind of what I do.
Cool. Well, nerds are always in good company here. So, I got to ask, what are some of your favorite video games and nerdy movies?
Favorite video games. One of my favorites is Bioshock. The That was one of the few that I actually beat. Big fan of the Final Fantasy series. My current favorite video game right now that I played like a lot of is Destiny. Um, then I also kind of, for some weird reason, I have a liking for Animal Crossing. I always tend to get a new one of those when a new one comes out. Uh, so yeah, a whole bunch of different favorites there.
Okay, awesome. So, going back a second there, you mentioned that you draw and you write. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
I
so
Go ahead.
which side would you more associate yourself with, as an artist or a writer, or is it a mixture of the two?
It's a bit of both. I started off drawing mostly, and then I got into writing as well. So I do it. I do both, like all the time. Um, but I draw basically to get ideas for what I write, or if have an idea that comes to my head, I usually draw it, and then stories will start popping up around those characters that I put together.
Okay, and so Wild Space Saga, is that a web comic or what is that?
Interesting, you should ask that. It started off as an idea for a web comic. Me and my co-author Terry, we started putting it together, and we had put it together on back when it was called Tapastic. It's now called Tapas.io. We had started putting the comic together, but we ran into some issues with stress and with trying to get people in on the comic. Originally, I was just doing the character design, and Terry would do the mechanical part of it because I don't really draw mechanical stuff all that well. He's extremely good at it. If you ever want to see any of his work, just go to our Wild Space Saga page on
What do you mean by
DeviantArt.
mechanical stuff?
Spaceships, robots, that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, we have
gotcha.
like in Wild Space Saga, we have these giant robots called gestalts that play kind of a big role in the story. They start with as like gladiatorial fighting robots, and they also have sort of a history behind them, what they were used for in the past centuries ago before the point of the start of the story. Um, but Terry was really good at drawing machines. I was really good at drawing people and some animals, and I could let my imagination explode because this was a story that takes place in a whole bunch of different worlds in a distant part of the galaxy. Uh, but what I wasn't good at the very beginning was putting together pages in comic book format, and also doing like background art and even just rendering art using computer programs. I was trying to get other artists to help us out, but and this is not a dig at artists in general, but and of course, I totally understand as an artist myself. We need to do the work better. You're on time. We ought to get paid for it, and that might be the reason why. But also, some of them tend to be very, very flaky. Even one who was a really, really good friend of mine at the time bowed out several times, and this she had a tendency to be really flaky from the get go. So that plus a lot of issues of stress on Terry's side caused us to rethink our plans to take down the comic, and instead of making a comic, make a series of books. Because I was already good at writing, I was working on books at the time, and I was like, "Hey, that'll work." He and I work really well together as co-authors, and so from that point, Wild Space Saga, it started to grow, and we managed to get so far 3 books finished. We have 2 published, third one that's on the way, working on a fourth one right now, and we still draw characters and things, and we relegate we relegate all that to basically concept art, and then if I have time, making short comics, and we post them on DeviantArt and our Wild Space Saga page.
Okay. And how many? So you said you have 3 books, and then how long would each of those books be?
Those books, I want to say, are somewhere in the vicinity of like 40 to 50,000, 60,000 words, relatively short.
Okay. And how long you been working on the project for?
Oh man, Wild Space Saga. Well, it was a lot of it came together from a lot of things that I just started drawing, and this was way back. I want to say when I first started thinking about it was when I was in college, and that so I would want to say that was anytime between 1995 and 2002. But I didn't have something that really started coming together as Wild Space Saga until I met Terry. I was I was talking to other fellow artists about helping me out to make something of these characters that I came up with. Because I was putting together a whole lot of ideas involving this one character that was named Zerx Paraska, and I drew a ship, and I was like doing a whole bunch of drawings of him like in action scenes and stuff like that. And I was like, well, this looks like something I really want to put together. And I was finding other artists, and then I met Terry. Actually, I'd known him for a time from when I first started college. We were part of a mailing group based on Jason the Wheeled Warriors, which was an old '80s cartoon that we had both enjoyed, and that was one of the catalysts that kind of got us thinking about what we wanted to do with Wild Space Saga, a big space adventure, just without magic. Um, and so he started working on it with me, and so it all started coming together at the time. I was discussing it with other friends, and we gave it the name Wild Space Saga after a while, and that's when things started taking off. We started going in the direction of making a webcomic at first, and then, like I said, we later on changed it to a book. We had actually gotten a few pages of the comic out on Tapas back when it was called Tapasic, and I want to say it was MechaCon. That was an anime sci-fi convention in New Orleans. I want to say it was back in 2012. I want to say no, it wasn't 12. I think it was like 2008 or something like that. He and I met up and started selling out like a short comic we did called "Finish What You Start," and that was when we started getting word out around it. But we really the word kind of spread. Um, Better on DeviantArt, even though we're still trying to get the ball rolling, getting more readers, for the book series.
Mhm.
And so we're still
So you
working on
mentioned something. I'm sorry, please repeat that.
As I said, so we're just still working on it to this day.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I feel like every artist has 100 projects always going on, and art in general, whether it be writing or painting or sculpting or digital art or whatever, I feel like all of that falls into the realm of art. And so, artists in general, creatives, we always have so much stuff going on, and the projects are never ending. I'll agree with that. But just going back to one thing you said there was no magic in your universe. And now, was that a very purposeful choice for you to do that, or kind of did it just end up that way?
I love making things that are a blend of sci-fi and fantasy, but the in this particular case, I think that it just sort of evolved to be strictly sci-fi. We have elements of sci-fi that kind of border on the fantastic, like people with psionic abilities, but otherwise, we don't have something that we really would call magic. Um,
Mhm.
going back to Jason the Wheeled Warriors, it was like a story of a boy who was going traveling around in this ship trying to find his father because he had like a half of this thing called a magic root, and his father had the other half, and we unite them together. It would destroy these evil creatures his father accidentally created called monster minds. One of the members of the crew of the Pride of the Skies was a wizard who had worked with his father. His name was Gillian. And so he used magic a lot. And also another one of the characters was a magical living suit of armor named Un. And so, like I said, that was a very interesting blend of sci-fi and fantasy. And I have done stories that have that kind of blend, but like I said, Wild Space Saga evolved to something that didn't have magic per se, just more
Mhm.
classic sci-fi tropes.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the universe. You mentioned some things here and there, but give me a rundown of, the state of maybe politics and what some of the races are like. Just let me know.
Okay, so the story takes place about 700 years in the future. At some point in time, a lot of the humanity, when they built the first FTL drives, started going out into space, but they lost the location of Earth, and so they settled in a distant part of the galaxy where they happened to have a whole bunch of habitable planets. And during the course of time, they united into something called the Imperium, or as it's known in this particular at the beginning of the story, is the First Imperium. But it didn't last long. Governments involving like multiple worlds just were too big, and it just collapsed under its own weight into this major cluster. You know what? And this war that destroyed many of the planets and messed up the environments of several others. But humanity did survive. They did slowly come out of it, though they took kind of like a hit in the technological level. So a lot of tech from the original First Imperium was lost. So they're still struggling to get that back. So what you have now is an alliance of worlds. It's simply just called Planetary Alliance. They're more just worlds that loosely work together. But what you have is a revival of the Imperium called the Second Imperium that started on a world called Icona, which one day kind of just shut down, had a massive interdiction, and then when it reawakened, it became an expansionist empire, started annexing a whole bunch of nearby worlds. And one of those worlds was a world that where they had like we reproduced using cloning technology called Jakarta's Pride. They started utilizing that cloning technology. I think we lost you visually. Can you still hear me?
I can still see you. Yeah, I can still see and hear you fine.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so they started utilizing that cloning technology, making an army similar to what was done in Star Wars, even though Star Wars was not, the idea I got that from. Because these clones are actually all female, because the population of that world is all female. So what you have now is the Alliance basically trying to consolidate what they have and learning to work better together in order to fight off the Second Imperium, because already they annexed a world that was one of their own, called Mandela One, and then now they have like one world that's called Tintagel 9 that's in a disputed territory and is sort of in a constant state of war, trying to struggle to maintain its independence. Um, and then also you have two independent factions. One are the space pirates, which are strangely enough the reason why humanity didn't go the way of the dinosaur. They managed to build back a lot of the technology and start sharing with the other races by salvaging old ships and things like that during the dark ages after the Imperium Wars. And then you have one of the only other intelligent alien races that humanity has discovered. You have the Felian Empire. Um, Felians had been friends of humanity from the very moment humanity arrived in that area of space, and they grew really during the times leading up to the First Imperium and before the Imperium Wars, developed a lot of trade between the Felian Empire and humanity. And actually, interestingly enough, the Felians, they have various subspecies, and a couple of them are actually able to crossbreed with humans. So you have some human Felian crossbreeds that live among humans. Some human colonies are very accepting of this; others not so much. uh, and so, I kind of lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, and then you have another species called Vlissians, which are a lot more enigmatic. They're very strong, what's called psionics, and the Felians seem to give them a lot of deference. And their plans, their machinations are heretofore or at this point kind of unknown, though they will play a very large part as the story progresses. So that's sort of the whole deal with Wild Space Saga. I mean, you have the main character is a guy named one of the main characters, a guy named Xerxes Baraska, and some of the stories center on his crew, a ship called the Reckless, which is one of the few ships of the First Imperium left over. It was originally a warship. Um, then you have a then you have another ship captain, Page, who flies another remnant ship of the First Imperium called the Shadow Star. And then of course, and then you have even the space pirate queen Alexa, who has another ship of the First Imperium, which is like the flagship of the entire space pirate fleet, the Bellerophon. And so the stories kind of merge between these three main characters and their crews. Sometimes one story may focus on one, and then another story may focus on the other. We've even done like several shorter stories that we put together in compilation works called Tales of Wild Space that tell side stories that have looser connections to what goes on in the main story.
Okay. Wow. Well, you certainly have a ton in your universe. And I kind of liked how at the end there you were starting to point it towards the characters. So tell me about a couple of your characters and some of their motives.
Okay, well, Xerx is actually related to the royalty of the pirate worlds. Though his cousin is the one who's on the throne, who won it after taking over the throne from a usurper. Um, but he kind of lives quietly, well, as quiet as his life can possibly be, on one of the main worlds of the Alliance called Saberna. Um, he is a Gestalt pilot. He fights in the tournaments, and so he gains part of his income that way. In other ways, doing odd jobs aboard the Reckless with his crew, which consists of two Felian techies named well. Their names tend to be kind of hard to pronounce, so everybody calls the one of them Salt and the other Pepper. So Salt has he has whitish hair, light gray hair, and Pepper has darker gray hair. And Salt is the father, and Pepper is his son. And then you have another techie named Mabala, who comes from Mandela One as a refugee after her homeworld was taken over by the Imperium. Also, his Xerxes' wife Neela is originally from Mandela One, so she's very much like a big sister to Mabala. Mabala also has like unrequited feelings for Pepper. And then you also have Varakeska, who is another Felian, but he's like another subspecies of Felians. They're actually original genetic stock. The Felians tend to look really different. I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but he's another Felian techie who has like a big, hard, really big tough bruiser, but also loves to party and to drink. Um, so that's like the crew of the Reckless, and then you have the crew of the Shadow Star, which is Paige, and you also have a lot. Oh, they're actually different. They're mercenaries, and they tend to go from the Alliance to the Second Imperium. For whoever can hire them to do whatever they need. You have her crew is very interesting. She has two guys named Ike and Brogan. Brogan was a really good friend of hers when she was in the Imperial Arm, not Imperial, excuse me, Alliance Army, until they got attacked by androids. Yeah, there is actually a race of intelligent androids. But I don't really want to go into too much detail with them because there's a lot of secrets behind them. Most of them are kind of insane, so insane that they got the better of her and Brogan and started eviscerating them to find their soul, and so a lot of their parts are replaced by artificial parts. So they're cyborgs. Then you have these three sisters. They're not actually sisters, but they treat each other like sisters. They're actually tanks. They are former members of the Imperial Army, and they're all like grown from composite genetic material inside tanks. So they're given the nickname tanks. And you have Maria, who's kind of a big ground tank. She is tall and extremely strong, but she's like when she's not fighting is the sweetest thing you'll ever know. And you have Miranda, who is more of a tactical master, but she's also she's her genetic stock is so geared towards tactics and calculations that she's basically autistic. And then you have Pip, who's very small. She's actually what is called a tech tank. These were basically created to be living bioprocessors for ship computers. Normally, she would have been inside of a pod, getting fed all of her nutrients, everything intravenously, while her mind is basically connected to the ship's computer, something similar to the Matrix.
Mm.
Then you have Kyron, who's like a later addition to the crew, who becomes the ship's resident scientist and doctor, and is also kind of in a relationship with Paige, and kind of stowing away oftentimes on board the ship. You have Artemis, who was actually an invention of the Imperium to create the perfect assassin, but she was sort of a flawed model and was stowed away on prison world of Hemlock 4. And she stays aboard the ship because she and Maria are kind of in a relationship. So that's two sides of the story. They're the two big main portions of the story.
Well, I can
Alexa,
tell that you have a depth of knowledge in your universe, and I can tell you're super excited about it whenever you talk about it. I mean, that's amazing because artists need to have that passion for getting all their ideas out. Where would you say that maybe one of the main inspirations for starting this was? And I'm sure you don't have one inspiration to fit all of these boxes because you just mentioned 50 different things in this universe that there's no other universe that I've heard like it. So maybe one or two inspirations that put you toward this.
Well, one of our inspirations was Jason the Wheeled Warriors because the large universe, vast universe. Probably you can think of Star Trek or Star Wars being a kind of inspiration, but a real big inspiration that we had is actually surprising Babylon 5. Me and Terry were both really into the story, and we really enjoy that. Also, probably a little bit of Stargate SG-1 thrown in there too.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and read an excerpt now?
I do believe I can. Give me just a moment. I can pull something up for you. No, I'm sorry. No, it's going to be put on the spot on that one.
No problem. Take your time. I can edit this out if we need.
Oh, no, it's no problem. All right. I think this is actually kind of a fun little part of the story. All right. So it's from chapter from the first book. It's called Between the Devil and the Dark. That's what it looks like. You know, on my end, it's kind of backwards. I don't know if it's backwards for you.
No, I see it perfect.
And so in this story, you have Zerx and his crew. They haven't really tested the Reckless out fully, and they kind of get pulled into an adventure where somebody comes to try to. Well, Zerx thinks she's out to kill him, but you later learn she's out to capture him. But for what purpose? So it's an Imperial assassin. Right now, they're being kind of chased by. It's in this part of the story. Neela and Zerx are being chased by a ship. Okay, so let me see. Are they freaking crazy? Zerx shrieked at the targeting system hollows. The pursuing craft was not at all what he'd expected. A Korax transport, its sleek shape unmistakable, its forward turrets open. Wait, turrets? Koraxes didn't have turrets. Shit, it's modded, Zerx thought through clenched teeth. Someone strapped mags to it. He muted the weapons alarm, silencing its incessant chirp. I know it's nighttime, but there's still air traffic. I really don't think they care about that, Neela remarked. She hovered her arm above the section of the controls console as thin, silvery filaments slipped from inside Daisy. A small, green, translucent, organic-looking device fused to the flesh of the back of her hand. It spun out the filaments from its gelatinous green dorsal orb, which threaded themselves into a series of sockets at the console's edge. Upon contact, Neela's gaze became unfocused and distant, and a plethora of hollows erupted about her. Buckle up, honey, she said, her voice now coming in through the ship's audio systems. I'll risk a ticket and punch the atmospheric boundary here. It'll get us closer to the Reckless without needing to double back on legal lanes. Might also give them more time to fire at us, Zerx warned. Not if we hit them first. Zerx frowned with dismay at the readouts as his console was feeding him, first noting the significant size between the ship and the pursuing craft, and then its armor component. Hate to piss in your cornflakes, Kipenzi, but I don't think we'll make a respectable dent in them if we emptied all our ammo. It's like a shark chasing a guppy. That is why you have the Reckless, Neela replied. We haven't tested her defense systems yet. Never a better time, don't you think? One of her surrounding holograms slid towards him. The comm icon flashed above the words, connected to Reckless. Grasshopper to Reckless, Zerx began, then yelped as he felt Neela give the ship a burst of acceleration. We're coming in with a bandit on our tail. Salt! Track our position for target verification. Weapons free! The face of a middle-aged Ankephelian appeared, nearly filling the screen. His dirty white hair surrounded a chiseled face, banded by stripes that were a darker shade than his hair. Salt, you're too close to the damn screen, Zerk said. Atmospheric boundary reached, Neela said just before another alarm sounded. They're firing. Bad news, Captain, Salt said, backing away from the screen. Zerk threw up his hands, making a disgusted noise. Let me guess. Weapons aren't working? My idiot son had to take them offline for his work, Salt replied, as Zerk gripped the weapons controls. He traced the targeting reticle to the image of the ship and the hologram below, and squeezed the trigger. As a part of him expected, much to his chagrin, the computer registered negative contacts. Then tell Pepper to bring them back online, Zerk said, feeling a headache begin to develop in his temples. He fired another impotent volley before giving up. How long will that take? Depends how long you can keep his nose out of that spazzy human girl's. Salt! Focus! Evasive maneuvers, Neela announced. Hang on. Zerx immediately felt the massive G-forces shove his right shoulder and arm uncomfortably into the harness. He gritted his teeth through the pain and fired another impotent volley at the pursuing vessel. Look, we're coming in hot. Can you at least have the hangar bay doors open? On it, he said. He began barking orders in Felian off screen before the video feed cut. For the love of God, try to get those damn guns online. I think that's pretty
awesome.
That's enough.
Yeah, that was perfect. You deserve a round of applause for that. Let's see if that works. It's loading. Your round of applause is loading. All right, I'm just going to edit one in. This is the worst. It never works. Okay, here's your round of applause.
Thank you very much.
So I really like that. You first off, I feel like if you haven't already, you should read your books. You should narrate them because you're really good at doing the voices. And I felt the sense of urgency, and I really felt like even though you weren't being incredibly descriptive about the scene itself, the dialogue was painting a picture of what was going on as they were describing. So I really enjoyed that. That was awesome.
Thank you. I actually do. I actually have done like some narration before, and even done some voice acting in the past for other little things here and there on YouTube for some YouTube users. I even did a narration for the first chapter of one of my other books on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, any final comments before I let you go?
Well, just if there's anybody out there who's actually thinking of writing, the best thing to do is just sit down and start writing. The best thing, the trick to being a writer is to write, especially if you want to do something sci-fi and fantasy. I mean, in this day and age, I think that everybody needs a bit of an escape. So I think the more, imaginative stories are out there, the better. And so, I'm trying to get mine out there. I hope this gets some folks interested in it. Just so the first book, it's called Between the Devil and the Dark. And the other is called, suddenly blanked on the name, Wrath and Redemption. They're available in paperback, hardcover, and audiobook on Amazon. Though I think that and also in Kindle. I think though the second book, they're still kind of getting some things together to put it on Kindle because the publisher was running some issues. But if it's not available now on Kindle, it should be very, very soon.
Okay. Awesome. Well, everybody, Brandon Hill, and you're going to get another round of applause right here.